Gaughan. Anthony,
Hi.
We were discussing earlier some of the threads that have been following through, the ideas that are popular right now at this conference. Can we discuss that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I've noticed, and I was talking about with a few people, is that the idea of demand seems to be quite strong. Not this idea of demand for teaching, but demand for quality. So I've seen talks where people are talking about how we should question the amount that we challenge our students. There was a talk yesterday by Jim Scrivener talking about that. Just a minute ago there was another one talking about how we as teachers need to get more comfortable at demanding more of ourselves and our students, and that's interesting.
Yeah, there are quite a few. It's been reoccurring as well in the interviews. So it's Jim Scrivener and Adrian Underhill have a blog, and Jeff Hardy-Gold, who we were just speaking to, his talk was about that as well. That we're simply not challenging enough.
And it's got to be about raising the bar within a classroom, but you've always got mixed abilities, haven't you, in the classroom? So you're a teacher trainer. What do you tell teacher trainees?
Right. Well, I think very often teachers at the beginning of their careers or at the beginning of training can feel quite nervous about trying to get students to push themselves out of their comfort zone slightly, because of course they're going through the same process. They're trying to become teachers, and that's a growth process, and that comes with risk and fear for many of them. And so I can understand this sort of reticence, but we just spend a lot of time looking at, well, why do you think these people are coming to us? What are we there for as teachers? And the only things that we really add in terms of value for learners is reliable feedback, really, and some kind of motivational stimulus to get better.
Definitely. And immediate feedback.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. The part of the feedback, what you just said, reliable feedback. Because I think there's a bit of a tendency to be too nice.
Yes, and that was one thing I was talking a little bit about yesterday in one of my talks. This idea of just saying to students, no, actually that's not right, is not necessarily a bad thing to do. In fact, it's probably a good thing to do. And so research suggests that if you don't say clearly to students that what exactly is it about that piece of language they've used that's problematic and how to get it better, it's going to pass them by. So being nice about things and kind of hoping that ideas will settle or they'll absorb them somehow just through exposure don't hold up when you look at the evidence. So we have to be a little bit more clear-cut about what's actually good language use or should be kept and what needs to change.
I think most definitely. I was taught not to say no or not to say that's wrong. I was taught to do almost. And in all actuality, maybe that's appropriate in specific cultures or different cultures. But I think with my context, it's definitely better just to be clear cut and say, let me give you some honest feedback on that presentation, quite possibly, and say,
And we talked earlier about teachers coming out of their comfort zone, and maybe something is to have your own little journal in your register. How many times you're actually going to give someone kind of negative feedback, and you probably afterwards you'll feel a bit bad, and you can just tick the box and think, okay, because it's for your own development to see how does it work, and then you can step back and see, well, does that student then get their effective filters up, and so you think, okay, it's not going to work for them, or do they then learn from that mistake?
And I think that's an interesting point you just made about setting yourself goals, and whether or not you reach them is largely irrelevant. The fact is, as soon as you say, I'd like to try to push myself or stretch myself to do something more, let's say here, to give slightly more developmental feedback or slightly clearer feedback in the course of a lesson, and I'm going to hold myself accountable to that, that then encourages you just to push yourself a bit further, and that's growth, and that's how things move forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's only fair to the students to not be wishy-washy. We think, and then we're taught to say, almost. That was close, not quite the answer I'm looking for.
Don't know where to go.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course we have to be clear about correcting some use of language and causing a problem of face, in certain cultures. And you can definitely do the one without doing the other. And it was interesting listening to some comments from teachers from totally different contexts from mine, where I would have expected face and protecting face or saving face to be a big issue. But they said, no, we actually want teachers to be clear and give us feedback, because at the end of the day, that's what they're for.
Exactly, and I think it provides more weight to the positive feedback.
Yes.
If you've got this balance. So if all I have is positive feedback in one way or another, or something, the continuum maybe gets down to wishy-washy, it's not very clear.
No.
Yeah, no. So I think it's far better to be,
So in your talk, did you have any more practical steps or suggestions that you could give to teachers?
Sorry, from
the talk that you gave, was it yesterday?
Yeah, it was yesterday. Well, basically I was just trying to reassess some of the techniques or strategies that have fallen out of favour since communicative language teaching really became a dominant paradigm. And so one of them, let's say, repetition drilling, which it was funny watching Jeremy Harmer this morning drilling an entire auditorium of people. That was very funny. But the problem is that many people think, I can't do that because it's either meaningless or it's behaviourist and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, it can be a highly effective motivational tool if handled well, and you may as well learn how to do it and use it judiciously and make use of it. Or things like teacher talk. There's a very strong belief in initial teacher training these days that teacher talk should be minimized so that student talk can be maximized. What people lose sight of is that a teacher talking to a student can actually generate more student talk, and it gives them more language to think about and maybe use themselves down the line.
So, comprehensible input, authentic communication. Most definitely.
And so you can't. It's about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's about using things intelligently. So just rethink some of these prejudices or these beliefs, and demand more of your training and demand more of your trainers. So again, ideas that have been coming up recently are like these beliefs that we have, these tacit beliefs or these explicit beliefs about teaching. How about we just question them and demand some kind of explicit answer about them, whether we agree or not?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Anthony, we have to wrap it up now, so I have to say thank you very much. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, no.
And thank you.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure.
We'll be back tomorrow morning after the live streamed plenary, about 10 o'clock, 10:30. We'll start interviewing again. Thank you.
Thanks.